You're smart, everyone leans on you, and yet you've been running on empty for years. Everyday life feels heavy, but you're not sure why. It's not like something big happened recently. No major trauma happened today, right? But breaking free from ruminating thoughts just creates this constant tension, like your nervous system is stuck in survival mode. And no one sees it but you. You overthink every decision, you keep people at a distance, you wake up tired and you go to bed wired. And you blame yourself for all of it. If any of this feels familiar, then what I'm about to share with you could be the most important thing you watch this year. First of all, congratulations on securing your ticket to the workshop. If you don't know, this workshop isn't just about you understanding trauma, it's about recognizing how it secretly shaped your life. The way you hold your body, the way you react to criticism, the reason you can't relax without feeling guilty. Trauma isn't always one big event. It can be created by micro-traumas. It's a pattern, a nervous system imprint created over years of emotional suppression, subtle betrayals, and a lifetime of just getting on with it. And unless we shine a light on it, it keeps running the show. That's why we've created this 3-part video series to prepare you, because when you arrive at the live workshop, we don't want you starting from scratch. We want you to arrive already tuned in, already understanding the real root of what's been holding you back. Otherwise, it's easy to show up to the workshop and think, it's just me, I'm just too stuck, maybe I'm too broken to be fixed. But once you understand what trauma actually looks like and how it affects your decisions, your relationships, your health, and your wealth, you'll see why most healing methods haven't worked. This workshop is where the shift happens, but this video is where the awareness begins. And awareness is the first key to change, and what I'm about to show you is normally reserved for our private clients. However, it's so relevant to where you are now, and I know having this awareness is the first step to lasting recovery. When you don't see the trauma patterns clearly, you internalize them. You call it anxiety or perfectionism or even burnout, but really it's trauma doing its job to keep you safe by keeping you small. And if you've been stuck in that loop for years, it's time to break it. And that's where Manna Abraham comes in. She spent years working with thousands of people across the globe to identify and release these exact patterns using a method called the Emotion Memory Pattern Release Method. She'll explain actually what's happening in your mind and your body and why just talking about trauma isn't enough to heal it. This video highlights the impact trauma has on your mind, your body, and your consciousness. So give yourself the next 5 minutes and start your journey of healing today.
Hi, I'm Manna Abraham. Today, I'll walk you through the impact of trauma and the 6 steps that you should know to recover from trauma. So, the reason why you should be watching this is firstly to understand what is the impact of trauma and how you and your mind and your body, how they travel through these effects of trauma, and what should you be doing or knowing to understand the 6 steps to recovery from trauma. So, when someone is impacted by trauma, whether it is a complex post traumatic stress disorder or a catastrophic event, or it can also be a minor event, but the impact of trauma is not dependent upon the scale of event, it is dependent upon the scale that an individual is affected. So, here on the impact of trauma, the very first time when a person is experiencing a traumatic event, it does not matter how big or small it is. If in that moment that person is experiencing shock or a shame, at that point of time, they're frozen. That time is frozen in their minds, and there they create this traumatic memory. The moment the trauma is stored in their body. So I repeat this here. The very first time when you experience trauma, it is stored in your body, that shock or shame. At that point of time, what happens is an individual may not be wanting to talk about it and they deny even acknowledging that they experienced something catastrophic or a traumatic event. At that point of time, what is required is for them to talk instead of hiding the experience. Because natural tendency is not to talk about it. Once they experience the shock or shame, and when they store this traumatic memory, based on the traumatic memory, they start building the model of their world. And based on that model, they assume a trauma identity. That assumed trauma identity is quite different from a normal identity. Again, the normal or assumed, they're just to differentiate how someone perceives the world, because a person who experienced trauma views the world totally from the traumatic experience itself, because it's almost like they're wearing that colored glasses and they start seeing the world only as that colored through the colored glass. So, as a result of this assumed trauma identity, who they have become and how they perceive the world is quite different. And if you are not addressing this assumed trauma identity, or if you are addressing this assumed trauma identity from a normal identity, you will not be able to understand the model of this world, because it's almost like a scientist and an artist coming together and trying to understand each other. They have completely two different worlds. So, as a result of creating that assumed trauma identity, it can be somebody can take advantage of me, or I am not safe, or I'm not a good person, or I don't deserve this. Any of those identities, as a result of this assumed trauma identity and the model of the world, they start experiencing these internal and external triggers. Quite often, we think the triggers are external because we experienced it externally. But the truth is, as much as the body experiences the situations outside, it also internalizes the same way inside you. So there are internal external triggers. So anytime this individual experiences or believes or feels there is a threat, a perceived threat to this assumed identity, trauma identity, then they experience these triggers. And those triggers are based on how close they are in time and space to that traumatic memory that they have frozen in that shock or shame. Then, based on these internal external triggers, they manifest as the negative patterns or behaviors. And that negative patterns or behaviors, you're only looking at it as a behavior or a symptom or as an attitude, or it may be a winning attitude or a losing attitude. But those behaviors, that negative patterns, are truly dependent on the assumed trauma identity and how they created their world through the lens of traumatic event. And these negative patterns and behaviors, when they're constantly repeated, what happens is that forms the character of an individual, and that can result in a stuck state or through or self-sabotaging relationships or changing jobs or driven to be something or someone, or cannot be calm and peaceful, constantly restless. So these are all the stuck states and the repeating patterns. So we can never judge a person based on their repeating patterns, or how they dress up, or how they are organized, or how they are not organized, or how kind or how unkind they are. You should understand they are all stemming from this assumed trauma identity as a protective mechanism. And this impact of trauma is not only mental, it is also physical, because people create diseases in their body because they cannot say no, or they cannot ask for attention, or they want to constantly protect themselves by not moving out of their homes, or by not stepping out of their organizations, wherever they are. They create a very static environment so that they are constantly safe and protected, even if it is detrimental to their growth or progress.
Wow, powerful, right? What did you take away from that? I think the biggest takeaway is that what happened is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility for yourself and for the next generation. Trauma is not just a memory, it's a living pattern. And when you see it clearly, you can finally stop blaming yourself and stop pretending you're fine and start to live a life that actually feels safe. In the next video, we'll take this one step further, and Manna will walk you through the exact 6 steps required to complete trauma recovery. And let me tell you, this is nothing like you've ever heard before. There's no endless therapy, no digging up the past for the sake of it, just real, repeatable steps to move forward. Awareness is the first step, and you've taken it today. You've done life hard for long enough. This is a brand new opportunity that actually works. I'll see you in the next video.